What is your most traumatic experience with a teacher? When I was in high school I got a lot of nosebleeds. Like a lot. So I got one in the middle of class and I asked the teacher for a tissue. She said she didn't have any, so I asked to go to the toilet to get one, then she said no. Soon I asked again when blood was dripping from my hands and she yelled at me for repeating myself, which is apparently bad. Soon a puddle of blood was on the table, then I got sent to isolation for disrupting the class. I was then suspended for acting inappropriate during class. She was then fired for putting my life at risk. I gotta say, when you get a nosebleed like that, you really see how much blood is inside of you. I was bullied really bad. Kids kept drawing awful ugly photos and leaving them on my desk with profanity towards my appearance. I had enough one day after dealing with a lot of abuse at home and the bullying at school, and when I saw another broke down crying and brought it to my teacher. She just grabbed it, looked and asked if I wanted it back. Did nothing to help, wouldn't listen to me about the constant bullying and did absolutely nothing. I was in 7th grade and still remember it to this day. Mine is more of a light-hearted traumatic. In 4th grade I collected Yu-Gi-Oh cards and I had gotten the, at the time, new 3 Egyptian god cards. Well, I was caught playing with them during class and my teacher took them from me and threw them out. I was devastated after all the packs opened and cards traded to acquire them. I never forgave her. Did they ever end up being worth anything before all the reprint boxes? I would have loved to see her face if she found out they were worth some coin. Edit. The teacher was an older southern lady in her 60s, so she was definitely in that mindset that she had 100% say in whatever she did with our personal belongings. Pretty sure if corporal punishment was still allowed I would have gotten the paddle on several occasions. I wasn't the only one who lost cards that day. Buddy who sat next to me had his Black Magician of Black Chaos and Blue Eyes Ultimate taken from him. I'm 65, and I still remember when I was 6 and the nun told me to wash my desk and then wring out the sponge, and when I squeezed it instead of twisting it, told the whole class that my mother was a bad mother because she had not taught me correctly. I knew if I protested that my mom was a good mom I would be punished. It still bothers me that I didn't stand up for her. Why did that nun have to put me in that position? God dang it. As if nuns know a damn thing about motherhood. What a count. My 4th grade teacher had a reputation for making one boy in her class an unpopular scapegoat each year. Lucky me. In previous years I'd been just another kid in the playground, but within 2 months the other kids wouldn't play with me during recess. One day I refused to go outside for recess. She asked why, and I foolishly told her that the other kids didn't like me. When they came back in, she marched me to the front of the class and asked for a show of hands. Who didn't like me? 4th grade kids, mostly, did what 4th grade kids do. I broke down that night and told my mom what had happened and what had been going on all along. She marched into school the next day, got a beating that included the principal, and tore the teacher a new hole. I was still stuck in that class, but the teacher moved on to a new victim. Funny thing how self-esteem influences academic performance. My school used to give us a Stanford Binet IQ test every year. My score dropped 10 points from 3rd to 4th grade, then rose 20 points in 5th grade when I had a nurturing teacher. If you are still alive, F you, Mrs. Erickson. Got accused of plagiarism over a paper I wrote, and didn't plagiarize, that I was really excited about because of how well I thought I did on it. Enthusiasm fully destroyed. I had a similar experience where my lit professor brought me in to tell me my paper was flagged by the software for being plagiarized from over 180 other student papers from around the country. Not websites, not public articles, student papers from other schools. Longest chain of plagiarized words was 6. I laughed because I thought she was pointing out how ridiculously sensitive the software was. She was offended that I laughed at her. I asked her if she really believed that I tracked down almost 200 students to steal 3-word phrases from them and stitch them together into a paper, which would take 50 times the effort that it actually took to write it. Not in those exact words. I really thought I wrote a great paper. Got an A, but I think it was because she felt dumb. Teacher told me I was a liar to the whole class as she didn't believe my grandmother was a World War II evacuee. She refused to believe me as she assumed my mum was younger than she looked at the time, and therefore my grandmother was younger as well. She thought my mum was in her late 20s when in reality she was in her early 40s at the time. Conversely, had a teacher when I was in primary school who couldn't believe that a student had no grandparents who were old enough to be asked about their experiences in World War II for a project we were doing. This was in 1999-ish, so not too hard to imagine that just involves having two generations have children in their early 20s. Literally got the parents in because she thought the child was being deliberately obstructive and didn't want to do the work. During quiet reading time, teacher brought me to front of the class because I was reading a book for girls, and he asked me, "Why are you reading a girl's book? Are you a girl?" Then made me choose a book for boys to read. I was maybe 10 or 11. The book was Matilda, by the way. Fitting. My favorite teacher in middle school was arrested for child pornography. He wasn't my favorite after that. He also wasn't my teacher after that. We were discussing Jean Vanier and Delarge. For context, Jean Vanier decided to invite two intellectually disabled men to live with him and started setting up homes for them so they wouldn't be in asylums. The teacher looked right at me, I'm disabled, and said, "Oh yeah, Vanier created those homes so you people wouldn't be bothering people because the handicapped don't function in society." My friend I left just to talk it out. He got fired a few years later because he did not have his license up to date. Cherry on top, his wife was the vice principal. Had a teacher who hated my dad because he used to trespass onto the facility my dad was a manager of back in the day. Ducker was taking it all on me and was pretty open about it. Not so traumatic, but was a very bad experience for many. My science teacher subtracted 3 points of everyone's grades because he had a bad day. Half of my friends didn't make it to the next year. When I was in 2nd grade, my mom died. When I was in 3rd grade, the evil witch of a teacher held me back from recess one day for something. While it was just us in the room, she asked if I went to church. I said no. She then told me that I was going to hell and would never see my mom again. I hated that witch. The girls in our elementary school were given proto-sex ed before the boys. The basic puberty stuff. Your body is starting to change. You might develop breasts, sweating, all that stuff. They made a hoo-hoo stupid deal about keeping it quiet. It's the girl's little secret. Don't go spreading it around school. It only occurs to me now that that is kinda dangerous in the wider scope of things. Anyway, my best friend was a boy and naturally, I skipped right off to tell him why suddenly half the class had an assembly all by themselves. My teacher heard about it, got me alone, grabbed me by both arms and shook me. "Keep your mouth shut." She was my favorite teacher up till then. Totally a great thing to teach a kid. One time I was on my period and I asked the teacher to go to the bathroom multiple times. She refused to let me go. Eventually I stained my uniform and the chair. I was so embarrassed that I started crying. When my mother found out, she made the school fire that mother ducker. Not exactly me, but had a teacher yell at one of my friends for not doing his homework and give him a Saturday school, even though his parents had died the night before. Didn't traumatize me personally, but I had a first-year lecturer in classics who went out of his way to terrorize the class. His first words to us were, "I suspect as many as half of you cannot read." He then administered a test, which 2/3 of the class failed. He was not shy about voicing his rather gleeful displeasure. I did well enough to avoid his wrath, and, annoyingly, get singled out for praise. He would routinely throw questions at students who weren't paying rigorous attention, in a 3-hour lecture on Friday morning, and then berate them for not knowing the answers. His comments on papers were beyond trenchant. "Are you illiterate? Do you imagine this makes sense? This is childish," etc. The unfortunate part is that he was a superb classicist. A close second was a novelist turned writing prof who hurled a girl's manuscript out of his office door, nearly hitting me in the hall, as he shouted, "This is not writing." She came out to pick up her magnus opus moments later, weeping. Great writer, self-confessed teacher. I said that the dot over the I or J is called a tittle. She said it's not a tittle, it's a dot, and with that, she accused me of being impertinent. That's all for today's video. Hope you guys liked it. If you liked the video, subscribe. If you want to support the channel, the best thing you can do is simply watch the videos. But if you really want to see the channel thrive, subscribe, like, comment, add to favorites, add to playlist, and share with friends. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Reddit and Insta. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you with tomorrow's upload.